happy Friday. So various things happening today. Again, we've had a little bit of flurry of news this. We actually often do in October after the conference season. A little bit of another flurry. We've got Putin has managed to tickle Trump's belly again. So Trump was thinking about allowing Ukraine to get Tomahawk missiles. Putin gives him a call, and then Trump goes, "Oh, actually, we need these Tomahawk missiles for ourselves, you know." Apparently didn't realise this before he phoned Putin. Apparently, he needs Putin to tell him what weapons he needs for the United States, right? But amongst others, we've had Nigel Farage, who's now pretending to be anti-Russia. Oh, you should absolutely shoot the Russian planes down. Yeah, you shoot them down. Basically, so that when someone eventually, because he knows people are going to keep now asking about Russian briberies, we can say, no, I'm not a Russian stooge. Look, I'm talking about shooting their planes down. But let's begin, yes, with the voter ID, the national ID thing, the digital ID. Because the first phase is sort of, they're doing it in stages, which sounds quite sensible. So Matt Can't Play there saying, I've wanted proper national ID on my entire adult life. Think it can help with a range of issues. Just hope they don't F it up and I can get over that. Well, that's it. And then Brad saying, how have the government managed to get to the testing of product stage so quickly? So I can't really answer definitively, but what I can say is we do sort of already have digital IDs in Britain, even government issued ones, because some migrants need them. So the system sort of works. Now, I'll tell you what's interesting. I ought to put a link to this, actually, in the description below for later. But for now, so there's a Guardian article that's got some interesting points in it. Unfortunately, it doesn't go into enough detail on some of the points, but I can try and look up that. So what they're doing is the first people that are going to get these, the veterans card is digital. It's gone digital, right? Is it from today? But I think either if not today, then imminently, veterans ID cards will be digital. And I'll tell you what's interesting here. So specifically for veterans, it says the Royal British Legion has called the card a positive development. They're looking at it and going, this is going to help people access service and benefits, right? So they're really positive about it. But there's another veterans group, the Veterans Association UK, they don't like it at all. Now, unfortunately, you don't need a lot of explanation for the Royal British Legion's position. The Royal British Legion, remember, doesn't just represent veterans. Mostly it's specifically veterans who sort of need public services, some special support and help. It's like particularly elderly ones or vulnerable ones. So I can well see how they will see it as positive, because if you need access to government services, particularly like niche ones, then digital ID would be really useful, because as I've said before, trying to prove who you are in this country is really very difficult. It's amazing how easy it is that some people have to steal your identity when it's actually bloody difficult to prove. So how is it easy for con artists to prove that they're someone they're not, when it's really hard for me to prove that I'm someone I am? But I'm curious as to, but it doesn't say Veterans Association UK. It doesn't say what their objection is. I'm sure they've explained it. I'll have to look it up later, but it doesn't explain it in the article. All it does is quote them saying, we don't need it. Well, that's not a reason not to have it. Like, if you don't need it, what's the problem? It's not for what Labour says it's for. It's like, well, it is. A lot of veterans don't like the idea of it, and that they're using it as an experiment. Well, they're not using it as an experiment because they are and they aren't. They are going to learn lessons from it. I mean, the government have said that, and you would do that anyway. You know, if you roll something out, this is actually good. This is better than just rolling everything out in one go. This is like bit by bit. So veterans ID cards now, inevitably, the government are going to look at how it works and improve it. Right? That's not experiment. Well, it is experiment, but it's not being used as an experiment. It's being used because they're digitising everything. But why wouldn't you do that? And then by the end of 2027, so in 2 years' time, our driving licenses will be digital as well, which will be useful. But where was it? All right, so there is some new news on this as well. There is some news, because there are some concerns about it, and some of those concerns are not valid. Like, it does quote here Richard Bergen saying, he's a Labour MP. He's saying it threatens civil liberties. It's like, it doesn't really, doesn't it? Again, I'd like people to explain who believe that, how. Because you're not talking about giving the government information. They already have the information. They are giving it to you in an access you can show someone else who needs to see it. And it says data security. Now, data security is a concern, obviously. We don't want this real honeypot for hackers, because we've seen it in the private sector, haven't we? Like Marks and Spencer's customers recently getting hacked, stuff like that. So that's a concern. But it does say here that, or it said somewhere, that there isn't going to be a central database of it. So there's all these going to be these different IDs, digital, but separate. So there isn't going to be one big pot of all these, of this information. So in actual fact, it's not going to be centralized as much as people imagined. So that should downplay the data risk aspect of it. Also, we have to remember, this isn't something that we're doing, like, we're not the first in the world to do this. Loads of countries have already got it. Well, quite a few countries have already got it. And there's loads of countries working towards it. And what else did he say? And he says the risk of our data being handed over to the US tech giants. Mate, your data, the US tech giants have already got your data. You've given it to them. Richard Bergen has given his data to US tech giants. In terms of people fearing that the UK government will, however, there were two bits here. The first is that it says here, the government has said that they expect it to be built by the government's in-house digital services. Now, expect it to be built isn't a definitive thing, but at the moment, they're not talking about contracting it out to anyone else. And even if they did, remember, they wouldn't get the data. They'd just build the system, right? And then it says here, in terms of someone's asked about the cost, still no information about how much it costs. Yes, there is. It says, again, according to The Guardian, industry estimates. So this isn't from the government. Industry estimates say it could cost about £1 billion. So that's not excessive. When you consider that it will actually help a lot of people access public services, and I mean, from my own personal point of view, as I say, when I've gone for jobs in the past, I've always had a tough time proving that I'm allowed to do the job, because I haven't had a passport since my mid-20s. Without a passport, it's really hard. But it's also said here, so Liz Kendall has also ruled out that the system will ever allow the government to track location, consumer spending habits, or social media activity. I mean, that's the thing I want people to explain as well. So the government have said, no, we're not going to use this to track your spending habits or your social media activity. But it's like, but the US tech giants already do that. If you're worried about that, they already do. I'd be more comfortable with the Reform UK government tracking my spending habits than the people who already track my spending habits. But anyway, go through some comments here. It's harder for Brits to prove your right to work or rent if you don't have a passport, and national insurance number is not enough. No, because that's a number. Like, even your passport number is not enough. You have to have the physical passport. You know, there was a case very recently, earlier this year, because if you, for example, if you hire someone to work for you, you have to make sure that they've got the right to work in this country. And you get fined a lot of money if you get caught having employed someone who doesn't have the right to work. There was a case of a small business owner who got clobbered earlier this year. I didn't have much sympathy for them because they didn't do it properly. But, you know, they thought they'd got the proof. They accepted a photocopy of a passport, basically, like the key pages in a passport. Now, of course, you shouldn't do that. Even I would know you have to check the physical passport. But at the same time, you know, that's someone who's not a born and bred UK citizen. They've definitely got a passport, haven't they? If you're a migrant in this country, you've definitely got a passport, because how did you get here, right? So migrant workers often have an easier time proving that they've got a right to work because likely got the documentation. Ironically, a born and bred Brit may not have. The fear I've heard most people state is if it's digital, it can be taken away more easily, as if the government wants to take your passport off you. I've never understood it. Well, no, but also they can do that anyway. If they want to cancel your passport, they cancel your passport. You can still have, like, you know, if this is your passport, it's a bit of card, but if this is your passport, right, and you might think you've got this passport for 10 years, right? But if the government decide to cancel it, okay, you've still physically got I mean, you're supposed to surrender it, but if you don't, you can oh, sorry, I've lost it. I haven't got it. And if you think you can leave the country on it, it's like, no, you can't. You can't, because it'll flag up on because the systems are already digital. It'll flag up on the system that it's invalid. Doesn't matter what it physically says on the bit. It's the same with if you turn up for a job, if you try and use it to get a job. You know, when they put in the information on the records, it'll flag up as this passport's not valid. So that doesn't make sense. The thing is, there will be genuine concerns people can have, but there'll be an awful lot of rubbish that is not, like things that are just objectively not a concern. The fact that the government can take it away is like, they can do that anyway. Like an ID is a sort of authorization of sorts. The government can cancel it at any time. The benefit of this actually is you don't need to wait loads of time for things to physically come through. Like, you know, you think about the time it takes for a passport to come through. If there's delays in the process or a new driving license, you're physically waiting. Whereas if it's digital, it's updated immediately, isn't it? So that's actually a benefit. You've got other ones that people will be concerned about, you know, giving the government your data. They already have it. Like, what data do you think? What data do you think is... Your data is your name, they've already got it. Your date of birth, they've already got it. Your national insurance number, they've already got it. They gave it to you. You know, like, what information do people think they're handing to the government? They're not. You're not. You're not. The information is for the people that you're going to show the ID to. So if you need it for work, the information is to show your employer, but you've got to show them that information anyway. The government are just giving you an easier... The government already have the data. They're just giving it to you in a form that allows you to show it to others. And you still choose who you show it to. They've also said here, the government have said, in terms of other genuine concerns, I'm trying to find it now, but they have said that the police... here it is. So Liz Kendall said, at no stage in the future would people be required by the police to produce the digital ID. So the police won't be able to use it for that. Now, here's where you do have a concern. So it says here, very last line in the article, MPs have voiced fears it could be weaponised by future governments. Now, that is entirely possible, yes. Absolutely. I mean, it's all right saying at no stage in the future would people be required by the police to produce the digital ID, but any government in the future can suddenly decide, actually, we're going to say the police can do that. Yeah, they could do that really quite quickly and easily. But if a government wanted to do that, then they could just make you have the digital ID anyway. So that's not a concern of digital ID. That is a concern of future governments, right? That's not a concern of the ID system. Because the police could do that anyway. They can demand you hand over physical. Like a future government could allow police to demand your papers, so to speak, you know, hand over your ID in public. And if you can't, they could allow the police to put you in the police car and drive to your home and make you get it. A future government could do that if they wanted. So that's not an issue with digital ID either. MZ is saying, I've had a passport since my tweens, costs loads each time it comes up for renewal. Well, for me, if I did decide to get one, the thing is, like, I keep thinking to myself, I really should get one. Then part of me thinks, well, with this digital ID, maybe I won't need it. But in my case, because I haven't had one for over 20 years, like I'm almost at my last passport went out of date when I was 25. So I'm basically in a position now where for half my life I've not had a valid passport. So if I were to get it now, it wouldn't just be expensive, it would be rigmarole, because I'd have to apply for the whole thing. I'd have to get someone suitable to certify that I am who I say I am. It would be a right pain in the ass. Oh, Matthew there saying a foreigner needs to show a biometric residence permit to prove the right to work. Passport's not enough. So yes, often yes. So that's another reason. So going back to how are we able to do this so quickly? Part of the reason might be because we already sort of have it for other people. So when we're talking about, veterans being like the guinea pigs on this, they're not really, because we already have similar systems, which is why the government are able to say that they expect it to be built by the government's in-house digital services department. In other words, we already have digital services departments within the government, because we already have digital ID in this country, but it's for migrants. Would this make things cheaper to update? Yeah, address change. Of course, yeah. Because you don't have to physically print anything out. Nothing needs to be physically printed out or mailed or anything like that. How much it would save, I don't know, right? But because you may also argue, you might need to spend more on extra security, cyber security. So I don't know net. But yeah, if you don't have to have things physically existing. And it also means like we can get rid of driving license, a physical driving license. That's just waste, isn't it, when it's at the end of its life? That's just single-use plastic, literally, isn't it? So it's better environmentally. Whether it is net cheaper, I don't know, because I can imagine you need to spend more on cybersecurity. Because the one big drawback that I think that there is to the system is the fear of identity theft. Does this make it less likely or more likely? Because we have identity theft with physical things, and it's easier to copy a physical document than a digital one. But is that offset by the greater risks of hacking? So, so we have to make sure there. And David there saying, "It drives me mad. I can absolutely promise that Meta Facebook knows more about me than my own wife. I don't even have a single Facebook account, but they hoover up everything, sometimes illegally." Well, this is it. Again, this is a point I would make when you're talking about, giving information to US tech companies. They already have it. They've got more information on you than the government do. And I cannot say it enough, this digital ID system, you're not giving the government any information about yourself. They already have the information. Matt saying they are complete pits to get a passport. I don't relish it. I didn't bother renewing mine when I was 25 because I had no intent. Actually, ironically, when it ran out, I'd just the year before gone out of the country, but I didn't intend to do it again. So I didn't bother. And, you're in your 20s. Things are expensive in your 20s. So it was like an unnecessary expense for something I didn't intend to use. But then when I didn't have it, even though I didn't go out the country, I soon noticed how tricky things are, particularly, as I say, getting jobs in my case. So my passport expired around 11th of September 2001. No, it wouldn't have been September, no. It's been before that. It would have been in May. I say a new application for passport is a real ball ache, but be brave and travel the world while it's still there. I don't want to travel the world. Have you seen the world? It's terrible. I don't like travelling either. I'm the anti-Graham on this one. Oh, Mr. Bull, they're saying, cheaper from a citizen's point of view, cost to get ID updated, which is a big complaint. Well, but it's the same thing, isn't it? Because the fee you pay for your passport or driver's license or whatever it is to cover the administrative costs. So the fee you pay, the government haven't said anything, by the way, if you're asking for an official answer. the fee you pay is to cover those administrative costs. So whether it will be cheaper, I can imagine it could be cheaper because there isn't anything physical to produce and it doesn't need mailing to you. But it might be cheaper from that point of view. The other thing as well is an awful lot of these systems will be done automatically. So there'll be no actual physical people managing a lot of the process. So so the risk is entirely about hacking and not about civil servants sneakily looking up details of someone they don't like or anything. But at the same time, you may have extra costs with cybersecurity. So I don't know. Obviously, I would imagine, so I mean, let's look at this from a political point of view as well, as we do discuss politics every now and then. Politically, of course, it's a massive risk. So the government aim to use the veterans cards and then the digital driving license and stuff like that in 2027 to calm people's fears, to basically say, look, this works, it all works, it's all fine. That's a really good idea, as long as it works. What if it doesn't, right? They only need, and do you know what? And we know the media, there doesn't even have to be anything go badly wrong with it. If a single person in this country with their new digital ID, whether it be a veteran or someone with a driver's license in a couple of years time, all it takes is for one person to have a technical issue with it, and they'll go to the Telegraph, and the Telegraph will have it all over the front page, right? So, yeah, so that's an issue. But the other issue is this. So I said when it first came up, I did point out that polling just from last month showed that it was actually quite popular, and amongst all voters, it was broadly popular. There were 3 times as many people in favour of it than against. Then Labour announced it, and then the very next poll says actually people are against it. It's basically, this is the political reality of the situation. Keir Starmer, unfortunately, his credibility is so poor, and Labour's in general, that they announce a popular policy and they suddenly make it unpopular. It's quite remarkable, isn't it? So Labour really, it's a good idea to calm people's fears down by effectively phasing it in, like bringing out different digital IDs to the point where it's all normalised and people are comfortable with it and no longer fear it. But all it takes is for a technical cock-up, and the media will embellish the hell out of it. It's really heartening they're looking at doing it in-house. Probably the real reason Palantir ran their mouth off about it. Maybe, but again, I mean, even if a private contractor had done it, there's no reason why it should have given them access to anyone's data. They'd just be building the system. They would need the data to build the system, but not use of the data. Problem is that developers leave backdoors in the systems they write, so always open to hacking regardless of security protections. But, I mean, quite a lot of this information is already stored electronically anyway. The weakness will be on the user end, won't it? The weakness will be on the user end. But that is still an issue. Will the digital ID incorporate biometric info? Yes, because you're going to access it with your face or fingerprint. So, yes, that's how you'll access it. Again, that's a security measure. So, but obviously for that, you have to input some biometric information. But, I mean, on my phone, I access my phone with my fingerprint. So, I've already given Samsung my biometric data. And you have to give your biometric data to foreigners if you want to leave the country, because passport's biometric. So when you're using the new EES system, the entry-exit system, or was it exit-entry system? I can't remember. But the EES system, that's going to be using biometric data. So you're already giving your biometric data to people anyway, if you leave the country at any rate. But yes, it's going to use biometric data to access. Stops people, otherwise people could steal your phone. Now again, I just showed you I have access to my phone, right? Not everyone does. So some people, they just turn their phone up. So if someone stole their phone, they could just use it because there is no PIN or fingerprint or anything like that. So if your digital ID was just on your phone and there was nothing there, like someone could steal your phone and then you've got your digital ID. So there has to be something. And biometric unlocking is better than pins because people forget pins, don't they? Particularly when they're stressed. Like, you know, you're going in, you for whatever, like job interview or something like that, or you're not an interview, but you're going to get the job. If you're stressed and you forget your pin, you'll feel a right tit. Reason I prefer it in-house wasn't about privacy, just about against outsourcing needlessly. There is that as well. Again, the fact that it says, I mean, the line in The Guardian is, ministers have said they expect it to be built by the government's in-house digital services department. So that's an intention rather than a definite outcome. So we will see. For people who don't use phones. Now, that is where you do have an issue, of course. So, and one thing that the government needs to be alive to, yes, there are two groups of people. Well, it's the wrong group of people, really, isn't it? People who don't have smartphones, and even if they sort of had to get one, aren't really comfortable with using them. So, yeah, that's an issue the government's going to have to tackle. However, what I would say on that point about people who aren't tech savvy enough to and they don't use smartphones, people are forced to have one. If you're unemployed and you want to access out of work benefits, you have to have one. So again, there are people in this country who are already required to have smartphones and know how to use them. You have to have one if you're going to access out of work benefits. You have to have one if you're going to be a migrant in this country. So there are already millions of people in this country who are required to have one and make sure they know enough of the basic functions. So although the government should make sure that people, just because they're not tech savvy, don't fall foul of anything, it is nonetheless required of people anyway. It's already a requirement for millions of people that, you know, you have to get with the times. There comes a point where you have to get with the times. Hopefully they won't ask Fujitsu to make it. Well, yeah. I mean, as I say, at the moment, remember, they already do produce their own systems. There is already a government group for doing so. It's not an entire government department, but, you know, there is a department for doing so. And as long as they can manage it, then, yeah, we should be okay. Release the Brit phone. Could you imagine? Now, we want something that works. We let the Japanese carry on making them. Digital ID should be supplementary rather than a replacement. Well, see, the thing is, I think it should be a replacement because, again, if you're going to think about the big part of it being this right to work, right, proving your right to work, small business owners, which are the backbone of the private sector in this country, right, you know, remember, small business owners employ roughly as many people as all the big businesses put together, and they have to employ people all the time. They don't have PR departments, or HR departments, sorry, is what I meant. So, and if it's going to be secure, you need employers to be comfortable with knowing who has shown them the proper authorization to work, right? So if you had it as a supplementary system, you're basically saying to employers, which is what you're saying right now, this is the system we have now. You know, they have to be able to prove their right to work to you, but there's loads of ways they can do it. It's like, well, I'm not an expert in that. You know, someone who works in a HR, like a large business will have a HR department. The people who work there, that's their job day to day. So they will learn how to recognize what is and isn't valid. But a single business owner, someone who runs like a fish and chip shop or something, they ain't got time for that. So no, there should be one system that everyone can be familiar with. That is more secure. I say must travel fill as you'll be required for many forums. Remember Spockstein words, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. No, no one's invited me to leave the country. I occasionally get invited to go to London. I can just about cope with that. British made phone, flag on the back, Starmer OS. Yeah, I don't think that would sell, in all honesty. Roger there saying, I'm tax heavy, I refuse to use a phone. Well, I don't use it very often. I use it for when I go out or when I go down. I usually take a little break at some point in the afternoon to go down with the dogs and my wife, and I'll play the Wordle and Spelling Bee. Even WhatsApp I use on my computer. I use WhatsApp on my computer. Obviously, it's through the phone, but I don't actually use the phone for it because it betrays me. It betrays me. The autocorrect, and I imagine you can turn it off, but I'm not tech savvy. You see, tax savvy behave. Spoonerisms. So I can't be arsed learning how to do it. But the autocorrect screws me every time. It's embarrassed me no end of times. Oh, MZ saying facial recognition pretty accurate. Just had to take my cap off for a couple of seconds while showing my boarding card to get on plane to country. I use facial recognition on my laptop downstairs. It's actually very good. I can be there eating my tea and it still recognises me. The only problem with the facial recognition, so I also have it on my tablet, but it doesn't work so well on my tablet because since I've lost weight, it obviously thinks my face looks a bit different. But it's fine because I know the pin for that. I have a really good way of remembering. I have different pins for different devices. I never have the same pin for the same device. But I have pins on like 5 different devices, I think I have. And they're all different. And I remember, and I've got a really good method for working them out. I'm not going to tell anyone what it is, obviously. But I have a really good method for making pins that I can have on different devices and not forget. The Samsung autocorrect's awful. Is it a Samsung one? See, again, I don't know about the tech. If I'm doing it in WhatsApp, is it the Samsung autocorrect or is it just WhatsApp's? I have no idea, in all honesty. But anyway, it is what it is. SFAX there saying, to copy some country, you need their cooperation, not guaranteed. Oh, you're talking about, I'm sure the government will have also approached some countries that have it. But yes, you're right there. Copying someone else, not always applicable. For example, is that EST for Estonia, smaller than London? Or 3, copy someone who's copying their issues, yeah. Well, but you can still learn, can't you? You can still go and talk to them and say, well, what were some of the issues? You know, what were some of the things that if you could go back 5 years and tell yourself would have really helped you, right? Without handing over a load of sensitive data. But there it is. Oh, it would be Samsung as it's their keyboard base, I believe. Okay, see, I don't know these things. I have no idea. But anyway, we'll have to leave it there. I've got to get ready for the other stream at 1 o'clock on Graham's channel. Thanks a lot for coming on, everyone. Have a great rest of weekend. And until next time, I'll see you later.